Do something different the next 90 days than you did the last 90 days, like picking up the books to read. Do something different, like the new health disciplines relationship with your family. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter how small it is. You'll start doing different things with the same circumstances. Since we cannot change the circumstances, but we can change ourselves, we can change what. Then he gave me another secret to success. When he said what you have at the moment, Mr. Owen, you've attracted by the person you've become. What you have at the moment, you've attracted by the person you've become. Feel the simple principles here. Once you understand these, it starts to explain so much. Now, sometimes it's a little tough to take blaming yourself instead of the marketplace, taking responsibility instead of putting it off on someone else. That transition sometimes is a challenging mission. And this one was a little tough for me. He said, Mr. Rohn, you've got pennies in your pocket, you've got nothing in the bank, the creditors are calling, you're behind on your promises. He says, here's how that occurs. You've attracted up until now, you've attracted the things to you because of the person you've become. Now I said, well, how can I change all that? He said, very simple, if you will change, everything will change for you. You don't have to change what's outside. All you've got to change is what's inside. To have more, you simply have to become more. And then he said, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. Don't wish for less problems, wish for more skills. Start working on yourself, making these personal changes. And he said, it'll all change for you, Shelf said. Here's the secret, Mr. Owen. Learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Once I got that, it turned my life around. Learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job, he said. If you work hard on your job, you'll make a living. If you work hard on yourself, you can make a fortune. If you would have known me at age 25, you would have said Jim Rohn's a hard worker. If you'd have known me, you'd have said that I'm the guy. I don't mind coming a little bit early, staying a little bit late. I don't mind that you'd have said, well, Jim Rohn's a hard worker, you say. Well, how come he's got pennies in his pocket? Nothing in the bank and behind on his promises. Well, I was a hard worker, but I was working hard on my job, not on my... So I'm telling you, if you'll learn that simple little principle and start the process, today, latest tomorrow, give you tonight to think it over and start this whole process of personal development, work on yourself, make yourself more valuable to the marketplace. I'm telling you, you can so dynamically change your income. And economics is the least of the values that you can start earning in terms of equity. If you'll start working harder on yourself than you do on your job, work hard on yourself and develop the skills. Work hard on yourself and develop the graces. All of the stuff necessary to become more valuable to the marketplace. I'm telling you, your whole life can explode into change. Promotions, no problem. Becoming more valuable to the company. I'm telling you, no problem. Money, no problem. Economics, no problem. Future, no problem. If you just go to work on the right thing, not get things out there to change. Don't try to change the seed. Don't change the soil. Don't change the sunshine. Don't change the rain. Don't change the mix of seasons. Let the miracle of everything that's available work for you and start working on the inside. Work on your philosophy. Work on your attitude. Work on your personality. Work on your language. Work on the gift of communication. Work on all of your abilities. And if you'll start making those personal changes, I'm telling you, everything will change for you. So success is something you attract by the person you become. Success is not something you pursue. Chase, run after. Success is something you've developed, something you've become. You attract success. So whole key to unlock all the treasures, whether it's economic treasures or spiritual treasures, financial, social, personal, every way you can possibly think of is by your own personal development. Then he added one more, which is so important and it's probably worth the price. The seminar, here it is. What you become is much more valuable than what you get. What you become is much more valuable than what you get. The major question to ask on the job is not what am I getting here. The major question to ask on the job is what am I becoming here? Not what am I getting, what am I becoming? So it's very important what you become because what you become attracts. If you become cynical, you attract cynicism. What you become attracts. So this whole subject of personal development was so vitally important to me, it changed my life. I was a millionaire by age 31. And that was just the economic part of it. It took me 6 years from age 25 to age 31. It was unbelievable. Mr. Schoaf over a 5-year. before he died at age 49, who taught me some extraordinarily simple things. He only went to the 9th grade in school, never finished high school, never went to college, never went to university. So he put his ideas and his experiences in very simple language, which I think for me, kid from the farms of Idaho, that simplicity was so important, because if it would have been technical, I'd have missed it. If it would have been mystic, I would have, backed away. But it was just basic, blunt, ABC familiar stuff that I hadn't thought of before. And he did start to remind me, and those ideas changed my life. Mr. Schaff was the one when I said, this is all they pay. He said, you've been working 6 years, Mr. Owen. How come you're not doing better? And I said, this is all the company pays. He says, well, that's not true. I said, no, this is my paycheck. This is all the company pays. He said, no, this is all the company pays you. I thought that's a new way to look at it, right? He said, doesn't the company pay $23.45 times this amount to other people? And I said, well, yes. He said, well, then this is not all the company pays. It's all they pay you. And if you qualified, wouldn't your income grow 23.45 times? I said, I suppose so. He said, we don't have to work on the company. We have to work on... You see, that was the beginning of what he called the phrase personal development. I told him things cost too much. He said, no, you can't afford them. I thought, well, that's a new concept. I hadn't thought about that. We put some of the valuable things on the high shelf so you can't get to them until you qualify. If you want the things on the higher shelf, you got to stand on the books you read. Every book you read, you get to stand a little higher so you can get the things on the higher shelf. See, I learned those concepts. It was so incredible, and here was the most important one. Success is something you attract by the person you become. See, that phrase changed my life. Success is something you attract by the person you become. Success is not something you pursue. It's like chasing a butterfly. You can't quite catch it. Success is something you attract by becoming an attractive person. See, those were new concepts to me. I'm just working hard, trying to make a living. Here's what he said to me. This changed my life. I got a chance to teach this in Moscow and across Russia. 3 visiting, now the 4th. Here's what Shuf taught me. Profits are better than wages. Nobody taught me that in high school. Nobody taught me that I went to 1 year of college. Nobody taught me profits are better than wages. Wages make you a living. Profits make you a fortune. And how could you work on both a living and a fortune? He said, well, you could start part-time working on your fortune while you're working full-time on your living. I thought, wow. Now he said, it's fun to get up in the morning, not just getting up, go to work to pay the rent, but to get up to go to work to make a fortune. First, to make a living for my family. Second, to make a fortune. And then he taught me how to make both a living and a fortune. Guess what I did? I learned how to make both a living and a fortune, and I found out anybody could do it once they get the information. And at age 25, I started receiving this extraordinary information. Here's what he said. Your income is directly related to your philosophy, not to the economy. I thought no one ever told me that. I kept hoping the economy would change. He said, no, your philosophy has to change. I assured him that I had my fingers crossed. He said, that won't help. Then what could I do to change my income and multiply it by 2, by 3, by 5, by 10, and then multiply it by 10 again? What could I do? And he started giving me the disciplines in the process of learning the skills to change my life. This was an extraordinary man. Those were extraordinary times for me. Life-changing in every manner that you can imagine, but very simple ABC concepts. Here's what I learned: not to search for the exotic until you've discovered the basic. And those basic philosophies that he shared with me during that time were life-changing. Now, if you're excited and you're ready to change, let me give you 3 steps to start life. Change that can change your life, your personality, your lifestyle, everything can change. Here's the steps. Number 1, find out how things work. The first key to doing better is find out to change your life. Really, you need ideas. There isn't anything an idea can't change. And Shelf taught me the major problem is lack of an idea, not a problem. At first, I didn't have any money. I said to Mr. Shelf, I don't have any money. They said, that's not a problem. Now, see, up until then, I always thought it was right. I was confused. He said, no. The problem is lack of an idea on how to create money and wealth. It isn't lack of money, it's lack of ideas. So if you get the ideas, so you can change anything. To get ideas, you need a constant study of finding out. Now, Shove also said, when you find out something that works, put the information in your journal. Don't use your head for a filing cabinet. Put it in your journal so that you can do the next best thing. Repetition, 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 repetition. Go over it. And if you repeat it, go over it. Sure enough, someday, some mysterious day. But the idea takes root, starts to grow, and shows up in your bank account, and your dress, and your personality, and your lifestyle. But capture the ideas in your journal. Find out how things work. Shove gave me this word for my life change. He said, study, great word, if you wish to be successful. Study success. If you wish to be happy, study happiness. If you wish to be wealthy, study wealth. Don't leave it to chance. Make it a study. Some people just go through the day with their fingers crossed. See, that won't do it. You've got to study the things that can change your economic, social, spiritual, personal life. Now here's a qualifying phrase, and we'll have several of these qualifying phrases throughout the seminar. Here's the first one. You may not be able to do all you find out. I understand that you may not be able to do all you find out, but you should find out all you can do. See, you don't want to wind up at the end of your life and then discover that you've lived only 110th of it. And the other 9/10 went down the drain, not for lack of opportunity, for lack of information. So that's number one. Find out how things work. Now here's the best human virtue for finding out: curiosity. Make a note at curiosity. Curious, you might add a word to it, that'll help. Childish curiosity. Well, kids do if they want to know something bad enough bug you. That's the phrase, they can ask 1,000 questions. You think they're through? They got another 1,000. They'll drive you to the brink. It's a virtue when you got to know, be like a child. Now, if you're curious, let me give you 3 ways to find out how to change anything, any life direction, any dimension. Here's 3 ways to find out how to change anything. Number 1 is to read. Become a good reader. All of the successful people I know and work with, they're around the world. They're all good readers. Curiosity drives them to read. They just read. Read, bomb. Become a good reader. Now that's my opinion. Listen to the other lecturers and listen to me and make up your own mind. Don't be a follower. Be a student. Okay, I say really for life change, you got to read. One way to learn is from your own experiences, but another way to learn is from other people's experiences. See, one book might save you 5 years if you read it. Did you know, though, there's books on how to be stronger, more decisive, but speaker. Be a leader, have a better effect on other people, develop your personality. Did you know there's books on that and people don't read them? How would you explain that? And they can read. Did you know that hundreds of successful people have written their stories in books? And they wrote down how they did it, and people don't read it. How would you explain that? The guy's busy, I guess. You know, you get tied up. The guy says, well, yeah, you work where I work. By the time you struggle home, it's late. You got to eat a bite of supper, watch a little TV, get to bed. You can't sit up half the night reading. And the guy's behind on his car. Payment, good worker, hard worker, sincere. But we got to be better than sincere and work hard. Otherwise, at the end of your life, you'll wind up cold, stony broke. You got to be better than a good worker. You got to be a good reader. Now, you don't have to read half the night, okay? Although if you're broke, that's not a bad place to start, right? Get on with the cure, but put this in your notes. 30 minutes a day. Just devote 30 minutes a day to reading. Stretch it to an hour if you can, but at least 30 minutes. 30 minutes a day. Read something positive, something challenging, something inspirational, something instructional, something instructional. Get at least 30 minutes a day. And here's the next clue every day. Don't miss. Once you set this up, just don't miss. Miss a meal, but not your 30 minutes, because you can get along without some meals. But you can't get along without some books. There's a Bible phrase that says humans cannot live on bread alone or just food. It says the next most important thing to food is words. Words nourish the mind. Makes us different than animals and dogs. Words nourish the soul, so humans have to have food and words in order to be happy and healthy. I told my staff the other day, some people read so little they've got rickets of the mind. They're undernourished mentally. So to get a good diet of words, I suggest good reading habits, 30 minutes a day. Now, some people don't read because they don't read well. I understand that. And the national average is fairly poor. people have fairly poor reading skills. They're still trying to operate on awkward old skills of the past, right? Reading one word at a time. And with such poor skills, when you read, the mind usually wanders because you can think about a lot of things. The mind is an incredible mechanism, and if you read poorly, the mind wanders around thinking of other things. While you're trying to read, did you ever read a page and wonder what it said? So I got to read that again, right? That's because the mind is just doing this job, right? Just wandering around. Did you ever read yourself to sleep? See, that's another problem. The mind says, who needs this? Just shuts off, right? Poor skills, well, a guy looks at a book 500 pages and says, no, you're starting right. Well, I mean, I'd never get through this one anyway. In our weekend seminar, we take a whole section in about 2-3 hours, and we go through reading skills. How to read a book a day is the title of that subject. And I'll tell you what, if you can read a book a day, it'll change your whole life. I mean, a book a day will change your whole life. Expose yourself to a whole variety of things. Spiritual, moral, personal, economic, history, geography, everything. I mean, you can really change if you read a book a day. So you might want to attend the weekend. Get in on those reading class skills. It's incredible. A book a day will change your life. But hey, whether you read slow or fast, or whether you read awkwardly, or whether you read well, here's the key. Read. Don't miss. Here's what reading is. Reading is tapping the treasure of ideas. That's what reading is. Tapping the treasure of ideas, and ideas can change any part of your life. And if you've got a good excuse not to tap the treasure of ideas at least 30 minutes a day, or spend the money and get the bugs, I'd love to hear it. Some people have excuses you wouldn't believe. I say, John, look, I got this gold mine. I got so much gold. I don't know what to do with it all. Come on over and dig. John says, I ain't got a shovel. I say, well, John, get you one. He says, you know what they want for shovels? Let me give you the 2 books that started my library at age 25. My library now is worth many, many, many thousands of dollars. But it started with 2 books Mr. Shelf recommended. These, to me, got me started. Shelf said, become self-educated. He said, standard education will get you standard results, and you can check those numbers and see if that's what you want. But if you want to go beyond that, you now have got to become self-educated. So he got me started in my library. He said, one of the ways is build your library. Now I had a Bible, right? That was 66 books. So that's a pretty good deal. But here's what else he recommended. He said, number 1, get the book Think and Grow Rich. By Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. If you don't already have it, the title should intrigue you. Think and Grow Rich. That book in a secondhand bookstore, I paid $0. $47 for it. I've still got it. One of the rare hardback covers. I read it several dozen times. Shove taught me repetition is the mother of skill. Some of the ideas in that book helped change my life as I look back on it now. The book was worth several $100,000, and I bought it for $0. 47, what a lesson. I learned the difference between cost and value. Before I met Mr. Shelf, I used to ask, how much does it cost? After I met Mr. Shelf, I asked, how much is it worth? I started basing my life on worth instead of cost, and everything changed. But that was book 1, Think and Grow Rich. The second book he recommended I get was the book on nutrition. Shelf said, study nutrition. I think that first book was by Adele Davis, Eat Right to Keep Fit. I think I've got lots of them now, but I think that was the first one. Shelf said, study nutrition. And there's all kinds of books on nutrition. Just read them all. Some are a little weird, but read them all. If you're weird, do the weird stuff. I mean, whatever, but read them. Then make up your own mind. Remember, don't read and become a follower. Read and become a student. Make up your mind. Find a plan that works good for you, but get the books on nutrition. Here's what Mr. Shelf said to me, vitality plays an important part in doing well. Vitality, he said. Some people don't do well because they don't feel well. It's not that they're not intelligent, it's that they're out, they don't have the zing and the fire and the vitality to do well. So he put it right on me about studying nutrition. He said, Jim, you wouldn't believe it. He said, I got this friend of mine raises race horses. The guy's got 9 books on how to feed horses. He does not have a book on how to feed himself, he said. My friend studies horse nutrition, studies it, vitamins, minerals, trace minerals, protein, amino acids, carbohydrates, fats, enzymes, proper balance for his horses, Shelf said. He's a fanatic, and he said you ought to see his horses. They're magnificent, beautiful, powerful animals. They can run like the wind. And he said you ought to see him. He's a wreck. He said the guy feeds his horses better than he feeds himself. Do you ever believe that? In my later studies, I discovered some people feed their dogs better than they feed their kids, if you can believe that. Anyway, I didn't mean to give you a health lecture here tonight. Okay, but take care of yourself. Work on that part because it's one of the answers to doing well. There's even a Bible phrase that says many times, the spirit is willing, but the body's weak. See, you're in trouble, and that is the problem. You wake up in the morning and the mind says, let's go get them, and the body says, I can't even get out of bed. So you got to work on both sides of this, right? Okay, but get your library started, get the books, put it together. Books are the trademark of civilization. It's fascinating to walk into someone's home and browse through their library, because your library says something about you. So put your reading together. Very important. Here's the second way to find out how to change your life, and that's to listen. Get around successful people and listen now. You can also learn from unsuccessful people. Take notes on both negative and positive. On the negative, the notes are called what not to do, and you got to learn what not to do as well as what to do. So learn from the negatives as well as the positive. Find out what poor people read and don't read it right. That's good information. Learn from the negative, but now you can also learn from the positive. Get around successful people. Listen to what they say. Listen to how they say it. It's important. We've all got about 16 waking hours. Practice listening those 16 hours. And I say practice listening because listening isn't easy. I found out it's easier to talk than it is to listen. But if you will, practice listening the 16 hours you're awake. Sure enough, from surprising sources comes great ideas. In sales training, we teach. If you want to learn sales, listen to the kids. Kids have got to be the master salespeople of all time. They have no equal. Father tells his young son, no, you cannot have an ice cream cone. 30 minutes later, he's licking on one. That'd be 30 minutes worth listening to. They got moves you wouldn't believe. Persistence runs deep like the ocean. And the kids never took a class on how to overcome objections. They already know how. They don't need classes. So listen and learn. Now, here's some of the best advice I've got for the whole evening. It won't get any better than this. This is it. Poor people ought to take rich people out to dinner and listen. That's some of the best I got. If a guy's not doing well, one of the first things he ought to do is find a guy that is doing well and offer to buy him his dinner. Spend $50,000, $60,000, $8,000. Go for the full 9 course. Start him on the juices and Horace Tuvers. Get him started talking. The salad takes 15 minutes. Keep it rolling. Biggest steak in town takes 45. Keep it rolling. Pour on the dessert. Stretch that meal out about 2 hours. If you get a successful person to eat and talk for 2 hours, they're able to drop ideas in your lap. Change your life. Multiply your income by 2, by 3, by 5. But you're right. Poor people don't usually take rich people out to dinner. That's the problem. The guy said he's rich, let him buy his own dinner. I'm not coming up with any money. And he says, besides, you work where I work. By the time you struggle home, it's late. You're lucky to get your own supper, let alone running around, trying to find a rich man to feed. And the guy's behind on his house payment. Good worker. Hard worker. Sincere, but you got to be better than sincere. Work hard. You'll end up broke. You got to be better than a good worker. You got to be a good listener and remember what you read and what you hear. Put the good stuff in your journal. Now, here's the third way to find out how to change your life, and that's to observe. You can pick up a lot of ideas just by watching. Get around successful people and watch. Here's why success leaves clues. Watch how the man shakes hands. Watch how the lady responds. People who do well do certain things over and over and over and over. And if you're clever, you can pick them up. Watch it all. For guys making $10,000 a month, I'd watch how he walks. Maybe that's it. Copy his funny little walk, somebody says. Well, that's kind of a silly walk. Say it's $10,000. I haven't got the money yet, but I got the walk. It's been bound to start somewhere. What I ask you tonight is to be unusual and be a good observer of what's going on. You can pick up ideas that can change your life. Starting tomorrow, just be a more careful observer. Now remember, there's 2 ways to see. One is called sight, see with your eyes. The other one is called insight. Do it with your mind. See with your eyes, you'll see things. See with your mind, you'll see answers. Put your eyes and your mind to work. And the best advice on developing sight and insight is pay attention. Don't miss anything. In the weekend seminar we teach, one of the greatest fatalities to success is preoccupation, lack of concentration. The guy's mind wanders. So you wind up average. You've got to learn to zero in, concentrate. I read a good article one time. Reader's Digest, the title is Wherever You Are. Be there. Excellent. Don't miss anything. Now we've lingered a little bit long on one here for personal development. Find out how things work. But it's so very important finding out, and I've given you 3 ways to find out. Now, here's the second step to personal development. Okay, 1, let's find out how things work. Here's 2. Go to work. You must now take action on what you found out in doing business around the world. We call it game plan. Put together your game plan. One of the major things we teach on the weekends. Seminars, game plans, how to game plan your office. If you're in sales, you need a game plan. Kids need a game plan. You need a home game plan, social game plan, business game plan. Everybody needs game plans, financial independence game plan, your investment game plan. Don't think in your head. Put it on paper. Don't operate out of your mind. Operate from paper. I often ask somebody, what are you going to do the next 6 months? And somebody starts to tell me, I say, no, don't tell me, show me. And show me your game plan for the next 6 months. Then I can look at things and maybe I can help. But you got to operate from paper. Put it on a game plan. Take action on what you found out. Now here's the best word I know of to go with action. Massive. See, that'll change everything. Massive action is called the cure-all. If you're going to make calls, make a few thousand. If you're going to make contacts, make a few thousand. If you're going to knock on doors, knock on a few thousand. See, that'll change everything. Here's the language of the poor. I'll try it a time or 2 and see what happens. It's the way poor people talk. The guy says, well, I'll give it 30 days. 30 days. You could guess his bank balance. You've got to have a better game plan. So here's one of the major things to do. Starting tomorrow, take a look at your game plan. If it isn't loaded with massive action, change it to tomorrow action. The formula really works like this. Pick up a good idea. Take heavy action. Pick up a couple of good ideas. Take heavy action. That's the formula for success, heavy action. It's a good thing we can edit all this, right? The formula for success, take heavy action on a good idea, right? That's the ratio. Now here's the key. Don't wait till you've learned 2,000 or 3,000 things, because that way you'll use up all the time and you could wind up smart and broke. And hey, it's okay to be dumb and broke, but if a guy's smart and broke, that's pitiful. Don't let your learning lead to knowledge. If you become a fool, let your learning lead to action, you can become wealthy, and there's many kinds of wealth. I understand that not just money. Money is one of the least of all values. I know some people with a lot of money that are very poor. Evita sings, as for fortune and as for fame, they are illusions. They're not the solutions they promise to be. So there's all kinds of wealth, but to get a big share coming your way, you've got to have a heavy action game plan. Now here's the 3rd step to personal development, and we'll wrap up personal development step 3. It's just a little caution, and all through life we need little cautions. This one simply says, don't try to beat the system. Find out how it works, work it, but don't try to beat it. Some people learn just enough to start slicing it, shading it, thinning it, cutting corners, and looking for cheap answers. See, don't fall for that. You'll wind up with a cheap life. Find out how it works best and do it that way. Even though it seems to take a little longer, do it right. Don't compromise with right now under this step. Here's another key, be a quick learner. Don't let it take long to teach you, learn quick. Don't run at the wall too many times. Learn quicker. One guy said he broke his nose 7 times in the same place. Somebody says, looks like you'd stay out of that place. Learn quicker. Now the 3rd point here is don't be stubborn. See, some people won't change even when a better way comes. I say, well, I've been doing it this way 30 years. Hey, be ready for change. If it's a better way, go for it. But don't try to beat it, or you'll be like the guy that went to Las Vegas. He didn't have much money, so he didn't want to risk his money gambling. But he gets to Las Vegas and the jackpot bells are ringing. The money's flowing, the lights are flashing, and he can't help himself. He's got the gamble, but instead of gambling with his cash, he decides to play the mental gambling game. And the brilliant scheme he worked out goes like this. He'd pick a number like 3 mentally. He would bet a certain amount of money on the number, and whether it won or lost, he would jot down that amount in his little pad. I would have won $5 if I'd have made that bet, just to keep track of it, win or lose. That way, come midnight, he can calculate how he's doing, win or lose, or how much. Only not his money. Keep his money. Just play this mental gambling game. So here he is around the gambling table, everybody else shelling out their hard-earned cash. He's got this brilliant scheme. Instead of betting with his money, he's betting with his mind. And he lost his mind, which means don't try to beat the system, I guess. Let's talk about some more parts of personal development. Here's the first one, physical. The physical side. Got to take care of yourself. Do not neglect to take care of yourself. A phraseology used in the Bible in my amateur way, but let me put it to you best I can. Here's what it says. Treat your body like a temple. That's a good phrase. Good suggestion. Temple meaning something you take. Extremely good care of at a temple. That's a good phrase. Treat your body like a temple. Not a woodshed, a temple, a temple, a temple. Take good care. It's the only place you've got to live currently. The temple nutrition. My mother studied nutrition. Passed it along to me, passed it along. My father, my children, my grandchildren, what a legacy that was. Learning to just take care of yourself. Key phrase. Some people don't do well because they don't feel well. They've got the gifts, they've got the skills, maybe they just haven't taken care of themselves. They don't have the vitality. Key phrase, vitality is a major part of success, vitality. So take care of yourself. I know a guy that raises racehorses. I'm telling you, the guy feeds his horses better than he feeds himself. He's so careful how he feeds his horses. He's so careful what they eat. He's so careful that they get everything. And because of that extreme care, I mean, these are magnificent animals. They can run like the wind, but you ought to see this guy 10 steps up a flight of stairs. And I mean, he's all out of breath. His horses can run like the wind, and he can hardly make it up the steps. The guy takes care of his animals better than he takes care of himself. Some people feed their dogs better than they feed their kids. Physical. Now, there's all kinds of parts to physical. Here's one appearance. It's part of the physical. Never have a second chance to make a first impression physical side. And here's some of the best advice on appearance I can give you. Comes from ancient script again. It says God looks on the inside, people look on the outside. Isn't that good information? Now you say, well, people shouldn't judge you by how you look. Well, let me give you a clue. They do. You can't deal in these shoulds and shouldn't. You'll be tipped over the rest of your life. Now, of course, when people get to know you, they'll judge you by more than what they see. But at first, they're going to take a look. So here's the best advice I can give you. Make sure the outside is a major reflection of what's going on inside the physical side. A few minutes a day, stay healthy. A little bit of nourished, a little bit of study on nutrition, stay healthy. Okay? Now here's the next part of personal development, the spiritual part. I'm an amateur on the spiritual side. I do happen to believe that human beings are more than just an advanced life form, an advanced species of the animal kingdom. I do believe humans are a special creation. That's just my personal belief, and I don't ask you to buy it. But here's what I do ask you to buy if you do believe in spirituality. In any manner, here's my best advice. Study it and practice it. Do not neglect your values. Do not neglect your virtues. If you do believe in spirituality, my advice is study it and practice it. Don't let it go unstudied. Don't let it go unnourished. If you do believe, that's my best advice on the spiritual side. Now, here's the third part. The mental side part of this personal development challenge is to develop, mentally learn, study, grow, change. It's what schooling is all about, and the human development takes time. Incredible amounts of time. Why we've taken the time for this seminar just takes time. Some things you can't cover in a 20-minute speech. You can't cover in a little 5-minute talk. Takes time. For humans, it seem like more time than any other life for human beings. The little wildebeest in Africa. Guess how much time it's got as soon as it's born to be able to run with the pack so it doesn't get eaten by the lions? Guess how much time it's got? A few minutes. Not hours, not days, minutes. Wow. But the human baby, wow. After 16 years, we're not sure. Unbelievable amount of time it takes. So it does take time for personal development. It does take time for spiritual development, physical development. But here's also what takes time. And that's your mental development. Feeding the mind, nourishing the mind. Some people read so little. They've got rickets of the mind. They couldn't give you a good, strong argument as to their own personal beliefs. I'm telling you, you got to be able to pick up those ideologies. You got to be able to pick up the philosophy. And here's the next part. You got to be able to defend it. If you can't defend your virtues, and if you can't defend your values, I'm telling you, even in the 90s, you'll fall prey to philosophies that are not in your best interest. And we've got to help our teenagers. We've got to help our kids, especially to be able to debate the major life issues. The political issues and the social issues and the religious issues and the spiritual issues and the nutritional issues and the economic issues and all of the rest of the issues that are valuable for us to build the kind of equities we want. You got to get yourself ready. And one of the ways you got to get ready is not just physical and not just spiritual. You got to get ready mentally. And this is where Schaff went to work on me to be ready mentally to develop the philosophy and also be able to defend your virtues and your values. Do you know if you study people who are at the pinnacle of anything, you recognize that to get there, motivation was maybe one of the formula, maybe one. I'll prove it to you. If you want to become a world-class bodybuilder, say an FBB pro, well, what that takes is you have to train twice a day, 6 days a week. You have to have 8 meals a day. Your calorie intake is regimented. Your meals are pre-planned and pre-cooked. You don't eat according to taste. You eat according to function. So my trainer, for instance, will eat, and I'm going, what are you eating? And he's having the most. He'll have chicken that was boiled without salt, and he'll have like half a kilo of it. And what are you doing? He says, I'm taking in protein. He doesn't say I'm eating. He says, I'm taking in protein. For him, it's functional. It's not taste-based. Then you will probably have to train for a minimum. And this is if you are a genetic phenom, you'd have to train for a minimum of 10 years before you could get on a stage and compete at an average level with an average global bodybuilder average. Okay? So why am I telling you this all of us here at the beginning of a new year, right? These things called New Year's resolutions. And then it's you New Year's resolutions, 1, make more money. Yeah, 2, change my boyfriend. 3, get into shape. 3, get into shape is somewhere in the top 3. What do? You go to the gym and get a gym membership. Yeah, you go to the local Nike store and you buy like all of your gym gear. You're motivated, you're inspired. You go into the damn gym, you go to YouTube, you subscribe to all of the fitness channels, you go to Instagram, you follow all of the fitness models. Without being used or motivated, you are going to the damn gym. You're going to get shape. That's what you're going to do. The people you're following on YouTube have been working on for a minimum of 5 years to look like that. You have the incorrect understanding that after a month of working out, you're going to look like them. So what happens at the first month? You're excited, you go to a gym every single month, and you take the pains and your body is sore, but I'm excited, I'm going to gym. Then life happens, company doesn't make money. You don't make your targets, you fall a bit, something happens, and all of a sudden you stop going to gym for a day. A day becomes 22, becomes a week. Now all of a sudden you've had a gym membership for 3 months and you haven't been in that time. What did you miss? You thought motivation was the formula. Winners don't need motivation. Winners need discipline. Discipline's about getting it done. Because it needs to get done, not because I feel like it, not because I'm motivated for it. You think Nelson Mandela's motivated to spend 27 years in prison? You think Martin Luther King was motivated to march across the states and proclaim freedom? You think, if you look at people that change the world, they're not doing it because they're motivated. They're doing it because they made a commitment to do it, and they disciplined to see it through. Discipline is far more important than motivation, which is why you got to be careful. The decisions you make, because once you make the decision, you have to see that decision through. Like my mentor says, first we'll make the decisions, and the decisions make us. So you got to be very careful. The decisions you make, be very careful. The commitments you make, motivation, I'm telling you now, is completely overrated. It's important. Don't get me wrong. We meet according to motivation. We feel good. Rah, rah. But that'll fade. You need a stronger will and a deeper commitment to see things through. One of my key phrases for the whole. Disciplines work miracles. Disciplines work miracles. And here's the first piece that works. Miracles 1. Do what you can do not. Let neglect grab you by the throat. Don't let neglect stall you on your path toward prosperity and health, being able to become powerful, influential, rich, beyond wildest imagination. Don't neglect what you can do. If you can read, read. If you can change, change. If you can grow, grow. If you can take one step, take one step. Do not neglect to do whatever you can do at the moment. Of course, you can't run a multi-billion-dollar business today. Mark couldn't either 10 years. Ego Mark couldn't either 5 years ago, but I'm telling you today he can do it because step by step, year by year, he took on what he could do. He didn't neglect it. He did the meetings he could do. He made the calls he could make. He read the books he could read. He took the classes he could take. And step by step, he got himself ready. I'm telling you, do not neglect to do whatever you can do because it'll work miracles. Personal development. First, productivity. Second, now, do what you can. Here's 2. Do the best you can. If it's a foggy night and you can only see 100 feet, how can you see another 100 feet? Answer, walk the first 100. Feet walk A's. As far as you can see, and then you can see some more, and walk as far as you can see, and then you can see some more. So what you've picked up here, just to do it as far as you can see it. And I promise you, if you'll execute as far as you can see it, you'll be able to see more. Do that, then you can see more. And finally get in tune of doing the best you can, and you'll have the activity that'll develop the disciplines. That will set this sail so that you can say it doesn't matter how. The wind blows. I'm prepared for some people. They see discipline as sort of an ugly word. You know, don't talk to me about discipline. But what you must understand is, discipline is a most incredible creative force. Discipline builds a career. Discipline develops good health. Discipline forms the most incredible marriage. Discipline puts together a friendship that won't quit forever. A discipline develops skills that can be magnified, and touch the world. Discipline opens up music, You can't have incredible music without discipline. In fact, we call them the disciplines. We call architecture and music, and we call playing an instrument, we call sculpturing. We call painting, we call writing, composing, we call those the disciplines. And the disciplines gives us the indication that yes, it doesn't come except by discipline, but it also means that the discipline is the open door to the creative process, to turn nothing into something and to turn imagination into reality. So here's what you must learn to do. Appreciate the disciplines and welcome the disciplines. Here's a good question to ask. What other discipline could I begin that would open up a whole new expression in my life of turning imagination into reality? Without discipline, there is no enterprise. Without discipline, there is no magnificent structure. Without discipline, there is no music. Without discipline, there is no health. Without discipline, there is no advantage. There is no future. So discipline is all when it comes to imagination, having something real, believing in it, and turning it into reality. The key to development is to be all that you can possibly be. I don't know what your talents are. I don't know what your skills are. But here's what I probably am right on that. You're behind on an accelerated effort toward your full development. I would suggest that now for some of you, I know that's probably really not true. But even as I look at my own life, because I'm tempted to procrastinate just like everybody else. I should have written 30 books by now. I've only written 4. I should have done a lot of things, but I haven't. I got distracted, and all of us, have these challenges. But what could I become? What could I become? I had one of my dearest friends. I've lost him. He died at age 53 one day, and he drank a little too much. David drank a little too much, but he did all kinds of things. He was a builder, and he was a dreamer, and he did a lot of things. But his drinking sort of kept him in a fog for like years and years. About 6 years ago, he was sitting at the yacht club, and he was in a fog. And suddenly it occurred to him, I wonder what I could have accomplished all these years if I hadn't have been in this sort of foggy state. And he said, that did it. And the last 6 years before he died, he was free. And you accomplished some incredible things, that last 6 years being all that you can be and not let habits drag you down. Not let things, sidetrack you from the full development of what you have. The capable of being what all could your heart encompass if you really had the chance and you really had the disciplines and really got to it? What could you really become? What could you earn? How healthy could you really be? How many books could you write? How many poems could you write? So here's what I would ask of you. If you feel that you're a little bit stalled wherever you are in your progress, I'm asking you to correct that. I'm asking you to see if you can't possibly be on a more accelerated track toward your possibilities and your full development. Here's what life is all about to become all that we can possibly be. The full development of all of your potential, that's number one. Number two is the wise use of all of your resources. That's what life is all about. Discipline, if there is a magic word that stands out above all the rest, this is the one: discipline. Discipline is the bridge between thought and accomplishment, the bridge between inspiration and value. Achievement, the bridge between necessity and productivity. Remember, all good things are upstream. The passing of time takes us a drifting, and drifting only brings us the negative, the disastrous, the disappointment, and the failure. Failure is not a cataclysmic event. It is not generally the result of one major incident, but rather a long list of accumulated little failings. Failing in life is failing to think today, failing to act today. Failing to care, to strive, to climb, to learn, to keep trying day by day. If your goal requires that you write 10 letters today and you write only 3, you're down 7 letters. If you want to make 5 calls and you only make 1, you're down 4 on calls. If your plan calls for saving $10 today and you save none, you're down $10 today. Now, the danger is looking at an undisciplined day and concluding that no great harm has been done. It doesn't seem like such a bad day. But add up these days to make a year, and then add up those years to make a lifetime. And perhaps you can now see how repeating today's small failures can easily turn your life into a major disaster. Success, on the other hand, is just the same process in reverse. If you plan to make 10 calls, and you end the day making 15, now you're up 5 calls. If you didn't get up a few on letters, move up the savings numbers. You can see what a massive difference it could make in a year and what wealth and accomplishment awaits for a lifetime. Discipline is like a set of magic keys that unlocks all the doors of wealth. Happiness, sophistication, culture, high self-esteem, pride, joy, accomplishment, satisfaction, and success. The first key to discipline is awareness of the need for and the value of discipline, and especially the discipline to make the changes. What will it take? What must I do? And what must I become to get all I want from my life? The second key is the willingness. More than that, the eagerness to maintain your new discipline deliberately, wisely, consistently. And the third key to discipline is the commitment to master the circumstances of your daily life, to see and harness the opportunities to make something of the sun and the rain, the good as well as what comes in the guise of misfortune. Discipline does many things, but most important of all is what it does for you. It makes you feel better about yourself. Even the smallest discipline can have an incredible effect on your attitude. And the good feeling you get, that surging feeling of self, where that comes from starting a new discipline, is almost as good as the feeling that comes from the accomplishment of the discipline. Second, a new discipline immediately alters your life direction. You don't change destinations immediately. That is yet to come, but you can change direction immediately, and direction is very important. Third, discipline cooperates with nature. Have everything strive. It is a common life function. How tall will a tree grow? As tall as it can. Everything strives to become all it can possibly be. And that striving to become is what discipline is all about. Disciplining ourselves to fulfill our natural potential, to become all that we can be. And finally, discipline attracts opportunity. Opportunity is always looking for ambition and skill and action. Discipline taps the unlimited power of commitment. The human will in action, driven by inspiration, enticed by desire, tempered by reason, guided by intelligence, can bring you to that high and lofty place called the good life. So start the new process. You can begin a new habit no matter how small it is. Small isn't important. Whether or not you start and whether or not you continue are all that is important. So to have a prosperous life, start a prosperity plan. To become wealthy, start a wealth plan. Remember, you don't have to be wealthy to have a wealth plan. A person with no means can have a rich plan. If you are ill, start a health plan. If you don't have energy, start an energy plan. If you don't feel good, start a feel-good plan. If you're not smart, start a smart plan. You can't start a can plan. If you haven't, start a have plan. Anyone can. Even a bad person can start hearing good messages and reading good books. Recognize that the start of that life, the happy life, the wealthy life is today. This is exciting. Both the process and the result can begin today. Start the new journey today. If you think of a new idea, today is the day to begin the discipline of putting that idea into action. Set this day up as a long, busy, exciting start for your new life. Get your first book for your new library today. Begin your new practice of setting goals today. Start clearing out a drawer of your new orderly desk today. Start eating an apple a day on your new health plan today. Put some money in your new investment for fortune account today. Start reading with intensity for your new wealth of mind plan today. Write a postponed letter today. Make a delayed telephone call today. Pick up your camera and take a picture of something to start your new treasury of photographs today. Get some momentum going, your new commitment to the better life. See how many activities you can pile on in this first day. Go all out. Break away from the negative downward pull of gravity. Start the thrusters going. Prove to yourself that waiting is over, hoping is past, and that faith and action have now taken charge. It's a new day, a new beginning for your new life. With discipline, you can't believe the list of positive moves you can make in the first day of your new beginning. Ask people why they procrastinate, and you'll often hear something like this. I'm a perfection. Everything has to be just right before I can get down to work. No distractions, not too much noise, no telephone calls interrupting me, and of course I have to be feeling well physically too. I can't work when I have a headache. The other end of procrastination, being unable to finish, also has a perfectionist explanation. I'm just never satisfied. I'm my own harshest critic. If all of the I's aren't dotted and all the T's aren't crossed, I just can't consider that I'm done. That's just the way I am, and I'll probably never change. Do you see what's going on here? A fall is being turned into a virtue. The perfectionist is saying that his standards are just too high for this world. This fault into virtue syndrome is a common defense when people are called upon to discuss their weaknesses, but in the end, it's just a very pious kind of excuse-making. It certainly doesn't have anything to do with what's really behind procrastination. The basis of procrastination could be fear of failure. That's what extreme perfectionism really is. Once you take a hard look at it, what's the difference? Whether you're afraid of being less than perfect or afraid of anything else, you're still paralyzed by fear. What's the difference? Whether you never start or never finish, you're still stuck. You're still going nowhere. You're still overwhelmed by whatever task is before you. You're still allowing yourself to be dominated by a negative vision of the future in which you see yourself being criticized or laughed at or punished or ridden out of town on a rail. Of course, this negative vision of the future is really a mechanism that allows you to do nothing. It's a very convenient mental tool. Well, I'm going to tell you how to overcome procrastination. I'm going to show you how to turn procrastination into perseverance. And if you do what I suggest, the process will be virtually painless. I'm going to be very specific about how you can do this. A moment ago, I referred to a negative vision of the future as a mental tool for inactivity. If you've been using that tool, I'm going to ask you to talk to the side and start using two other very powerful principles that foster productivity and perseverance instead of passivity and procrastination. The first principle is break it down. No matter what you're trying to accomplish, whether it's writing a book or climbing a mountain or painting a house, the key to achievement is your ability to break down the path into manageable pieces and knock them off one at a time. Focus on accomplishing what's right in front of you at this moment and ignore what's off in the distance someplace. Substitute real-time positive thinking for negative future visualization. That's the first all-important technique for bringing an end to procrastination. So as I were to ask you if you could write a 400-page novel, if you're like most people, that would be an impossible task. As soon as I asked you that question, a picture appears in your mind of a big fat book lying on a coffee table, hundreds and hundreds of words covering every page. Yes, somebody must have written the book that you see in your mind's eye, but that person surely wasn't you. Suppose I asked you a different question. Suppose I ask if you can write a page in a far a day for 1 year. Do you think you could do it now? The task is starting to seem more manageable. We're breaking down the 400-page book into bite-sized pieces, but even so, I suspect many people would still find the prospect intimidating. Do you see why writing a page in a quarter may not seem so bad, but you're being asked to look ahead 1 whole year? when people start to look that far ahead, many of them automatically go into a negative mode. So let me formulate the idea of writing a book in yet another way. Let me break it down even more. Suppose I were to ask you, can you fill up a page and a half or with words, not for a year, not for a month, not even for a week, but just today? Don't look any further ahead than that. I believe most people would confidently declare that they could accomplish that. And of course, these would be the same people who feel totally incapable of writing a whole book. And if I said the same thing to those people tomorrow, if I told them I don't want you to look back, I don't want you to look ahead, I just want you to fill up a page. And if we're this day, do you think you can do it one day at a time? You probably heard that phrase. That's what we're doing here. We're breaking the time required for a major task down into one day segment, and we're breaking the work involved in writing a 400-page book down into page and a quarter income. Keep this up for 1 year and you'll write the book. Discipline yourself to look neither forward nor backward, and you can accomplish things you never thought you could possibly do. One of the beauties of this technique is the fact that you can really take it to the extremes if you have to. If writing a page and a quarter during 1 day still seems too much for you, break it down even more. Try to write 3 sentences in the next hour. Don't look any further ahead than that. Come up with a way of looking at the task that finally seems manageable. Then all you have to do is persevere. Procrastination won't be a problem because the task is now so small that fear will kick in. And it all begins with those 3 words. Break it down. My second technique for defeating procrastination is also only 3 words long. The 3 words are write it down. We've seen how important writing is to goal setting. The writing you'll do for beating procrastination is very similar. But instead of focusing on the future, you are now going to be writing about the present just as you experience it every day. Instead of ascribing the things that you want to do or the places you want to go, you're going to describe what you actually do with your time. And you're going to keep a written record of the places you actually go. In other words, you're going to keep a diary of your activity. And you're going to be amazed by the distractions, detours, and downright waste of time that you come up with during the course of the day. All of these get in the way of achieving your goals. For many people, it's almost like they planned it that way, and maybe at some unconscious level they did. The great thing about keeping a time diary is that it brings all this out in the open. It forces you to see what you're actually doing and what you're not doing. A time diary doesn't have to be anything elaborate. Just buy a little spiral notebook that you can easily carry in your pocket. When you go to lunch, when you drive across town, when you go to the dry cleaners, when you spend some time shooting the breeze at the coffee machine, make a quick note of time you began the activity and the time it ended. Try to make this notation as soon as possible. But if it's inconvenient to do it immediately, you can do it later. But you should make an entry in your time diary at least once every 30 minutes, and you should keep this up for at least a week. What else do you have to do to gain the benefits of this extremely powerful productivity technique? Nothing. You don't have to do anything else at all. It's just a process for making yourself aware of how you actually spend your time. You'll naturally and effortlessly begin to reorganize your life. Perhaps that seems like too much to believe, but it's true. When you're forced to write down the fact that you hung out at the coffee machine for 15 minutes today, you'll think twice about doing that again tomorrow. When you've got to put it in writing that you worked on an important project for 30 minutes today and then took a break to read the newspaper, you'll persevere a little longer on the project tomorrow and forget about the newspaper. Just try keeping a time diary for 1 week, and you'll see how it can revolutionize your ability to focus and achieve your goals. Break it down, write it down. Very easy to understand, very straightforward. But these are powerful and effective productivity techniques. This is how you put an end to procrastination. This is how you get yourself started. But how do you keep going? How do you keep your motivation consistently high? How do you learn to persevere when the novelty is worn off and you're still some distance from your goal? We'll talk about that in a moment. The Irish poet William Butler Yeats once wrote a poem describing some of the unfortunate characteristics of the modern world. One of the things Yeats noticed was the fact that bad people seem to have the most energy, while good people become discouraged and doubtful of their own ability. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are filled with passion and intensity. Those are the words Yeats used. And it's true that we can look around the world and see all sorts of things happening that we might wish were not happening. And there are people working very hard to make those things happen for reasons that we might not admire. And when we see that, it's easy to start saying, what's the use? What hope do I really have? Why don't I just give up on all the things I've been trying to accomplish and just start taking it easy? Even people of strong character feel that way sometimes. All of us have moments like that. That's when perseverance gets really, really tough. What's the answer? Well, you recall that during our discussion of goal setting, I asked you to list 5 categories for your long-term goals. What do you want to do? What do you want to be? What do you want to see? What do you want to have? Where do you want to go now? I want you to add another one. With whom do you want to share? In other words, who are you working for besides yourself? In the first 5 categories, you were asked to focus exclusively on your own aspirations and why they were important to you. But now I want you to think in terms of other people. Who is depending on you? Who will benefit if you persevere and succeed? Who will suffer if you give up and stop trying? Who can you reach out to and help once you've achieved your goal? Write down answers to these questions just like you wrote answers for the other categories. For many people, the answers will appear quite readily. If you have a family, your spouse and your children are depending on you. Perhaps even your parents are depending on you if they're elderly and require some care. But even if you're a single person or just starting out in your career, you can think of reasons to persevere and succeed that go beyond your personal needs. Maybe you would like to share some of your financial success with the schools that educated you, or with the religious institutions that gave you spiritual guidance, or with a hospital that helped to heal you on some occasion. This sharing doesn't have to be limited to money either. If your work has given you certain skills, you can share your time and your abilities. You can, and you should. But even this isn't putting it strongly enough. It isn't just that you'll do better if you feel you're working for others in addition to yourself. You absolutely must find reason outside yourself to persevere. If you want to keep going when the going gets tough, Hemingway wrote, "A man alone hasn't got a chance." And that doesn't mean only that you need people to help you in life. It means also that you need people you can help. You need people who can become the real reason for perseverance above and beyond your material possessions or your financial success. What's in it for me can only take you so far. What's in it for somebody besides me can take you as far as you need to go. In the last days of World War II, the American cruiser Indianapolis was sunk by an enemy submarine. This was one of the most tragic incidents of the war for American forces, in which hundreds of men lost their lives. Many who made it through the initial attack had to spend days and nights in the water before rescuers arrived. The experience of trying to stay alive in the water was so overwhelming that many people simply gave up. In fact, the survivors reported later that virtually everyone wanted to give up at one time or another. But whenever some wanted to quit trying, the others would talk to him about the people back home who needed him, who were depending on him to survive. And if there was no one who was depending on him right then, they would talk about people in the future who would someday be needing him. People he hadn't met yet, people who hadn't even been born yet. They conjured up all sorts of reasons above and beyond. Simply surviving. This motivation beyond the self was the only motivation that was strong enough. And what was true in an extreme sense for those men in wartime is also true in all our lives, no matter what we're trying to accomplish. But let's suppose that there's a vast, hugely powerful force that nobody can withstand. And this immense force is always active and in furious motion. It never rests. It's like a slowly flowing river that can eventually carve the Grand Canyon out of solid rock, but that comparison doesn't really do it justice. The force I'm talking about is much more formidable than any river or ocean or glacier or any other natural phenomenon. Now, in trying to achieve your life's goals, would you prefer to fight against this great force? Would you want to struggle against this mighty power that has all the odds overwhelmingly in its favor? Or would you rather enlist this great power in your cause and make the inevitable work for you instead of against you? Take your time before answering. Think it over. By the way, time is that great power I'm talking about. Time is the mightiest force in the world, or even in the universe. Of course, the answer to the question I pose is very obvious. Why would you ever choose to fight time when you could have time on your side? Who wouldn't want to harness the great river of time that flows through all of life? Why wouldn't you want to use the power of time to generate power in every area of your existence, to turn the turbines of your hopes and dreams, to charge your every aspiration with lightning bolts of electricity? Well, there's only one way to make time work for you, not against you, and that's with patience. There have been some items in the news lately about changes in the climate, global warming, and so forth, and how the level of the seas will rise during the coming years and put whole communities underwater that now stand high and dry. All I can tell you is that in certain parts of the country, it's been plenty hot and dry the last few summers. And I'm sure there have been times when the residents of those areas would have liked to have seen some big ocean waves come rolling across the plain. Think for a moment about any state that's in the middle of this continent, away from the coast, and ponder this question. What do you suppose it would take to turn that state into a kind of surfer's paradise? So when it gets hot, you could just go out and let the waves cool you off. For example, what would you need in order to turn Texas into California? You take the perspective of an engineer, you'd maybe think about the water rights, the dams, and all the good stuff. You'd need the kind of undertaking that would make the Hoover Dam and Lake Mead look like a little inflatable backyard swimming pool. From that perspective, the whole notion's not only impractical, it's impossible. But if you believe everything that's been written about global warming and rising water, you realize that it isn't really an impossible proposition. In fact, some people are saying it's inevitable. You don't need any water rights or dams to see it happen either. All you need is patience. Here's another illustration of the power of patience. Imagine you're at a cottage in New England. When a blizzard hits, there's more snow in less time than any other winter on record. If you went to bed in the middle of this blizzard, you'd probably assume that when you got up, you'd have to shovel the drifts away from the front door just to get down the steps. You may even think about getting started on the work before you go to bed. But in this case, as it turns out, all of that bedtime effort wouldn't have been necessary overnight. The wind keeps blowing, and while you sleep, it shifts around 180 degrees, so all the snow on your front porch is cleared away. Naturally, you don't have to knock yourself out with a shovel. You may be saving yourself from a stiff back or a heart attack, and all you had to do was wait. Patience. There's a type of person for whom everything is undertaken out of desire to achieve a goal. They prepare food in order to eat it, not just for the fun of being in the kitchen. They start a business in order to make money. They exercise in order to get in shape. I'm sure that some of these people are very successful, and they are certainly highly organized. But in my opinion, a person of truly strong character sees success as an adventure, not as a point with an estimated time of arrival. The latter approach to me is impatient thinking. Impatient can lead a person into some very big mistakes. First of all, when you're always looking somewhere else, whether it's down the road or up toward the top of the mountain or off toward the left field fence where you're hoping to hit that grand slam home run. When you're looking off in the distance like that, you often miss what's under your very own nose. That means the pleasure and fun of living, which come in the here and now, get overlooked for something that not only isn't here yet, but might never arrive true. Patience is more than just a waiting game. Patience doesn't mean you sit around hoping for something to happen. Patience is not a passive quality. Sometimes patience can mean doing something else entirely. Thinking about another venture, taking off in a different direction while you give events a chance to run their course. All through his long career on the screen, John Wayne never felt he got the credit and recognition he deserved for his skills as an actor. Yes, his films were consistently successful at the box office, and even today, John Wayne is still the #1 favorite movie actor in the United States. But a big following among moviegoers didn't translate into critical esteem or the respect of his peers. That's what the Duke wanted, and he felt he deserved it too. Then, the last years of his life, he made a movie called True Grit, in which he played a drunken, one-eyed oldest marshal named Rooster Cogburn. That portrayal got John Wayne the Oscar he'd been waiting 40 years for. It wasn't the kind of high and mighty hero role he'd played when he was young. It finally got him his award, but it was a role that he'd waited for all his life, and he didn't even know it was coming. A colleague of mine told me this story. He was traveling cross-country on a speaking tour and found himself delayed in Chicago while changing planes in the first-class traveler's lounge. He fell into conversation with a gentleman who actually looked a bit like John Wayne during his True Grit. And he was a little surprised to learn this gentleman was actually from New York City. And there was another surprise, despite his refund appearance. This fellow traveler proved to be extremely soft-spoken. His favorite pastime was playing chess. But as he talked about his experiences in the construction business in New York City, he also demonstrated that he carried a big stick. His company had developed some of the most important commercial real estate in Manhattan, as successful people always do when they encounter other successful individuals. My colleague asked him how he'd done it. Well, he said, after I got my engineering degree, I spent some years getting hands-on experience in construction. I didn't want to be supervising people in any jobs that I didn't know how to do myself. So later on, when I started putting together my own project, I had to deal with some pretty tough streetwise operators, cement company guys, building inspectors, trucking companies. But I never tried to pretend I was any kind of hard case myself. I used to tell them right up front, you play straight with me and I'll play straight with you. I never tried to take advantage of anybody, but I never let anyone take advantage of me either. You see, I always was, and I still am, a great counterpuncher. Anybody who takes a shot at me in business had better make sure it's a good one, because I'm going to hit back hard. But it's like chess. You don't necessarily hit back right away. You have to be patient. You have to wait for the right moment. You have to let the other guy know, okay, you had your chance. Next time it's my turn, but you don't say that out loud. You don't say what you've got in mind, and you don't say when it might be coming. You just go on polite and friendly as ever. You don't ever let on that you're waiting for an opening, but you rest assured that your chance will come. Like any other investment, it takes patience. Patience is the key. Needless to say, those several hours between flights were both informative and enjoyable for my colleague, and we can all learn from this story. Don't concentrate on things you can't influence, like when the planes are going to take off. Instead, focus on things you can control. And when you meet somebody you can learn from, then learn everything you can while you got the chance. You never know when you're going to come across a book or an article that will provide a piece of information that can transform your life. One thing is for sure, however, and I've said this many times, the book you don't read isn't going to help. And it's the same with meeting people. You never know who is going to be able to teach you exactly what you need to know. Even if you don't need to know it now, you might need to know it at some point in the future. That might not be for 15 years, but it might just be in 15 minutes too. A patient man is always richer than an impatient one, even if the patient man has less money. What do I mean by that statement? Well, riches and wealth can take other forms besides dollars and cents. Okay, that sounds good. So in what sense is the patient man richer? The actual answer is very simple. A patient man is always richer than the impatient one, because the patient man can always afford to wait. The patient man is never desperate. The patient man has time to spare, while the man in a hurry is always on the verge of bankruptcy as far as time is concerned. In any situation you can think of, impatience is a source of weakness and fear, while patience is substance and strength. And here's another way that patience gives the person who has it an incalculable advantage over the person who doesn't, and gives him deeper insight into himself and others, which is a mark of great character. If you can only see the short term, if you can only think in terms of the here and now, then you are like a man with one eye. You can't judge distances. You live in a world that's flat and two-dimensional. In other words, the impatient person lacks all sense of perspective. Perspective lets you measure your plans and current events against things that have already occurred, and also against your desires and aspirations for the future. Then and now, here and there, near and far, need and know, watch and wait. These are the dual optics that allow the patient man to see in stereo. Where the nearsighted person sees only the present, or the dreamer sees only an imaginary future, and more likely than not trips over his mistakes trying to get there. The history of this century can tell us a great deal about the value of patience and perspective. History proves that time is the strongest ally you can possibly have. No matter what the odds against you or the level of adversity you're facing, time gives strength to those who have it on their side. This truth was very convincingly demonstrated over the course of World War II. Germany had enormous successes in the early years of the war, with the Blitzkrieg, surprise lightning strike from the air and land without warning that was used first against Poland and later against the countries of Western Europe. Japan also used surprise attacks successfully and almost gained a decisive advantage with the treacherous bombing of the unsuspecting American fleet at Pearl Harbor. But the nations that were allied against Germany and Japan knew the time was on their side, and they were prepared to be patient. Although you won't find this discussed in many history books, one of the most important events of World War II actually took place right here in the United States a few months before the attack on Pearl Harbor. At that time, the U.S. Army held a series of massive military exercises in Louisiana, which were designed to assess the preparedness of the American forces for participation in the war that was spreading across the globe. As it happened, those war games in Louisiana revealed glaring deficiencies in our military preparedness. It quickly became obvious to our military commanders that if America was soon drawn into the war, as many believed it would be, there would have to be a long period of rebuilding and modernization. And this would have to take place at the same time, as American forces would be fighting all over the world with inferior and outdated equipment. And that is exactly what happened. It took almost 3 years of patience and hard work and sacrifice before the U.S. war machine was brought up to modern standards. But President Franklin Roosevelt and generals such as Eisenhower and MacArthur knew that the wait would be well worthwhile, and that once the modernization was completed, victory would be assured. On the other side of the Atlantic, it was much the same story. Winston Churchill knew that England would have to endure months and years of bombing and threats of invasion, but he also knew that time was on his side. With great patience and courage, the British people waited out the bombing raids by planes and rockets. At last the tide began to turn, and the world realized that patience and endurance was going to defeat the most devastating attack that had ever been seen up to that time. In Russia, too, the city of Leningrad was under siege for more than a year. But the Russians knew the value of patience perhaps better than anyone else more than a century earlier. After all, they had left their bitter climate and the sheer size of their land. The French armies under Napoleon and the same natural forces eventually prevailed against the new invader. It was patient countries, the United States, England, and Russia, who won the Second World War against enemies who banked on surprise and the hope of a quick victory. There's no area of human activity that requires more patience than raising children. If you haven't got patience when you start out in this, you're going to have to learn it one way or the other. A baby is born after 9 months. If the future mother is tired of pregnancy before the time has expired, well, that's too bad, because there's still 2 months to go, whether she likes it or not. And when the child does arrive, he or she grows and develops at a pace that's quite beyond the parent's control. Parents who try to force a child's development are asking for trouble. And this is one point on which psychology and common sense are in complete agreement. We've all heard of parents who think they can create another Einstein by giving their 2-year-old a book on astrophysics. Or that if a child is made to play the piano for an hour a day, it will bring about the second coming of Mozart. None of this works, of course, and it also ignores the fact that all real prodigies develop completely according to their own timetable. And even then, the result was usually not exactly what one might have hoped for. Mozart, for example, had a very difficult later life. And he died young in part because he grew up so much sooner than her children. He never really had a childhood, and at 30, he was already an old man anyway. It doesn't take textbooks on physics or hours of music or any other kind of force to teach something effectively to children. It just takes one thing. It takes patience. It may seem like a callous comparison, but there's a sense in which raising children is like any other investment. So much depends on when you need to cash in your chips. If you're in a hurry, if you need to see results tomorrow, you're putting a lot of pressure on everybody, and there's likely to be a great deal of disappointment. But if you can afford to wait, you can ride out the hard times and eventually realize a profit. The odd thing is, sometimes waiting for years is easier than it is to wait for a few days or even a few minutes. None of us felt too strained because we had to wait 12 years to go through grammar school, middle school, and high school before getting out. Or at least the first 11 and a half years didn't strain my patience, but asked me to wait 45 minutes for a plane flight for 20 minutes in the waiting room of a dentist office. And if you catch me on the wrong day, it's almost more than I can handle. We all find ways to wait for the next paycheck, but how many can wait patiently in a checkout line in a crowded supermarket? How many people can stand and wait quietly for an overdue train on a railroad platform? It's as though there are two kinds of patience, the kind that sets you up for the long term, and gives you the promise of a better and richer day after tomorrow. Then there's the other kind, the sort of patience that helps you remain sane and sociable while you're waiting in line or watching the clock or waiting for a pot of water to boil. These kinds of patients, so different and yet so much the same, mailed into your character and have a fundamental effect on your physical constitution. Any doctor will tell you that it's better for you and everyone around you if you don't get exasperated with little things, if you don't fly off the handle at every annoyance and stick in your way. It keeps your blood pressure down and your friends and neighbors happy if you can greet life's little problems with equanimity and patience, because almost all problems can be solved if only you take the time to see them and think them through. That's very easy to understand and it's very easy to say, but it takes strong character to put it into practice. I'm never sure what to think when people say I want to make $1 million by the time I'm 40 or I want to retire by the age of 45. This combination of goals plus deadlines strikes me as short-sighted and maybe even a bit naive. It takes a worthwhile goal and subjects it to an imposed timetable. While you might have an idea of what $1 million would mean to you, or you might have really exciting plans for your life after you hang up the tie and business suit, I don't see how a person can reasonably expect to know who or what he will be or think or feel at some arbitrary moment in the future. This kind of thinking misses the whole point of success. The real payoff in financial and worldly success isn't the result of an amount of money divided by the age you are when you get it, or some other actuarial formula. The real payoff is found in the qualities of character you develop along the way. There's a story about a young man who had a very old and rich uncle. When the uncle died, the young man was called to the office of his attorney and told that he'd been left a huge fortune. To collect it, however, he first had to run a certain errand, which was described on a slip of paper. It seemed simple enough, but when the young man tried to accomplish it, this first task turned into another, and then another. As he pursued his uncle's final request, the young man was led into foreign lands and exotic adventures and untold dangers. More years passed, and the young man near lost track of how and even why he was on this long journey, and he could hardly imagine what its end might be. At last, the odyssey led him back into the very same lawyer's office where it had begun. "I'm here to collect mine inheritance," said the heir. No longer a young man, but a much wiser one, the lawyer smiled. "As your uncle intended, you've already collected it in the places you've been and the things you've learned. And again, as he intended, it will last you for a lifetime." Success that comes too easily or too quickly almost never lasts. There are people who achieve that kind of success. There's always a lurking feeling that they haven't really earned it, and that feeling eats away at their character. If they're lucky and smart, they create some new challenge for themselves in a totally unfamiliar field. These people have to build their character in order to survive their sudden good fortune. And that's the kind of character building that's done in an emergency. In fact, it's a true case of the cart coming before the horse. This doesn't require patience because there is no waiting or planning or even expectation involved. It's more a test of a person's upbringing than a test of character. We've seen how often the qualities of a strong character demand the presence of opposite qualities in an almost paradoxical way. Patience is no exception. Patience does not mean wait till next year. It means this year, but if not next year, for sure. I think Thomas Edison put it best. Everything comes to him who waits, but it comes sooner to him who hustle while he's waiting.
day I die.